So a client of mine is dealing with a pretty common human issue, which is basically you can't trust anyone to the level of paranoia, basically. And the funny thing about paranoia is while it looks crazy from the outside, the idea that people can't be trusted is actually a pretty accurate one. This idea that we can accurately predict people into the future and that they'll keep behaving the way we hope they will, and that people are good at their core and that they'll always be good to us. That's a delusional, naive belief to have. It's easily disproved with evidence. So being paranoid to the extent of believing that people are always a threat of being harmful is actually accurate. However, being paranoid is also not functional. If you completely distrust everyone and you don't want to cooperate or collaborate with them, you're all out on your own, out in the wilderness, and you'll get less things done less effectively. Thankfully, there is a third option, a middle ground where you engage in a different kind of trust that allows you to collaborate and have, working relationships with people. So I want to talk about that today. And one of the things my client brought up today was Steve Irwin, the crocodile hunter. And it's funny he brought it up because I've been thinking about this the last few months. Who's the one person, the GOAT of confidence? Who would I say is the ultimate role model of integrity? And I've debated a few different names in my head, and all of them had flaws except for Steve Irwin. I know him quite extensively as my hero, one of my heroes growing up. I used to love his show. And then as I got older, I watched his interviews more than just him jumping on crocs. Saw the way he thought, the way he talked. He was so consistent in his behavior. There was never any scandals or dramas. And his wife, Terry, was so kind of blown away by her relationship with him that after he died, she said, I can't date anyone else. Like, I've had my one true love. And I always thought, yeah, I mean, who could follow the crocodile hunter, right? So one of the things about him is that he was quite paranoid about people. And I don't mean in a delusional way. He didn't trust humans. And he mentioned this many times. He talked about how, he loves some people and so on, but generally people are kind of shit. And he's not wrong. People do behave in quite harmful ways if it suits their agenda. And people do this more often than we like to believe they do. And yet he was able to run a TV show, run a zoo, be a popular celebrity, collaborate and cooperate with obviously thousands of people in spite of this paranoia. So he was paranoid and distrusting of humans and yet able to work with them. And then you look at him and you realize, well, he was also paranoid and distrusting of crocodiles, but able to work with them because he understood their nature. He was able to work with crocodiles as crocodiles. And I think what he figured out is that humans are just primates. Sure, we're hyper intelligent and we've got complex language, but in the end, we're just another type of animal. And if you figure out how that animal functions, then you can work with it without needing to trust it in some sort of faith way where you hope it will be a good person. So I wanted to give you guys some hints on how to collaborate and cooperate with people without needing to trust them in the classic sense of what we mean by trust. So when most people say trust, what they mean is, I'll have faith that you are going to do what you say you're going to do. I'll have faith that because you've been a good person before, you'll keep being a good person in the future. I have faith that you won't betray me or do anything that's unpleasantly unexpected and surprising. And that is a very naive, delusional belief to have about any person. I mean, you think of anyone you've known for 10 or 20 years. Look how much they've changed since when you met them to now. Everybody changes all the time. The idea that someone will stay consistent forever is a delusional fantasy, right? But this doesn't have to lead to nihilism. You don't have to go, oh, people are shit. What's the point? I hate them all. Especially given the fact that you are one too. So let's be careful not to be hypocritical here. Rather than trusting that they'll be good by your standards, trusting that they'll be consistent with their words and their actions, you don't need to trust that. There's other things you can trust. Like with a dog or a crocodile, you can learn to trust that you know how they're likely to behave and therefore you can manage your own responses to them to keep yourself safe. People who work with sharks and crocodiles and snakes and tigers, they don't trust that the tiger is going to be good to them. My client was talking about those people who make documentaries about gorillas and stuff, and they get really close and intimate with the gorillas, but they've never lost sight of the fact that this is a fucking gorilla, and if he turns on you, he'll rip you to shreds. they never get like delusionally faithful that, they don't personify the gorilla into thinking that he loves them or anything. They just know that if he gets angry, I have to chew grass and lie down and it will calm him down. That's what they trust. They trust their responses to the gorilla, not that the gorilla is going to be nice. They know he's not going to be nice. Somebody working with crocodiles knows that this reptile is incapable of compassion, incapable of empathy, love, caring about any other living being. They don't need him to be that way. They just need to know how to work with an animal that's like that. So when you're working with narcissistic personalities, con artists, liars, psychopaths, you don't need to get all morally upset that they're not going to be a good person and call that being untrustworthy. Just understand they could be predicted, managed. Your safety around them can be protected and managed if you understand them. And if you understand them well and can protect yourself from their darker sides while still collaborating with them, that's trust in yourself. You don't need to trust them. You need to trust that you will make the right counter moves when necessary. When I'm playing against somebody, in a game of chess, I'm not going to trust that they will be nice and kind to me and let me win. That would be delusional. What I can trust, though, is that they're trying to follow a strategy to get checkmate. That I can trust. And once I know that, I can look at what they're doing, see what they're doing, and come up with counter moves. I don't rely on them being a good person. I don't hope that they'll miss, that they won't see the strategy I'm using. I just go, look, they're trying to win. That's what I can trust, that they're trying to win. So if they are trying to win, what am I seeing from them? What would explain their behavior if that was their motive? So if one thing you can trust with all human beings, and some people won't like this, is that they are self-serving. Okay? Even the most altruistic, kind people deep down, some voice is going, what's in it for me? See, those people are really kind and generous. They enjoy being kind and generous. That is a reward for them. Okay? They're not kind and generous because it's morally right. They're kind and generous because they like being morally right. They enjoy being that person. You know, People don't live by moral principles. We backwards rationalize our behavior to make it moral. We actually just do what we feel like doing. Okay? And when you understand that people aren't really following some sort of code, they write the code after they act. They do something and say, that was right because dot dot dot. As people give advice all the time as if the way they're living is perfect, and yet you can clearly see it's flawed. You're like, how'd you get to the point where you're telling everyone else how to live when you suck at it so much? Well, it's because they've done everything backwards. They've gone, okay, I did that, and because I've already done it, I'm going to make up a story about why it was the right thing to do. And now that I've convinced myself it's the right thing to do, I'm going to tell other people to do it, even though it sucked, right? So trust that they're self-serving and that they pat themselves on the back and narrative, justify their behavior. They're the good guy in the story. They're the main character of the universe. They always do the right thing. And if they made a mistake, it's because life's unfair. Very few people have responsibility. There are exceptions, but you won't need to worry about working with those exceptions. You don't need to worry about working with a healthy, responsible, respectful, confident person. That's not who this is about. All right. Steve Irwin doesn't worry about working with a little puppy, right? There's no threat there. It's the crocodiles he pays attention to. So this is all about working with the crocodiles. The character Littlefinger in Game of Thrones is one of the best to observe to give you a sense of what the true nature of humanity is like, the self-serving nature of most people. And he says something like, whenever a situation's happening, he always asks himself, what's the worst possible thing that could happen here? What's the worst possible reason they could have for what they're doing that would explain everything I'm seeing? So he does this thing where, if something's happening, he goes, okay, their worst possible reason is they're trying to fuck me over, they're trying to do something to me, they're trying to beat me at my loss. Does that explain what I'm seeing? And if it does, then he acts accordingly. So that's the kind of thinking that you can bring into working with sort of dangerous, untrustworthy, or unknown people, is assume that they're working for their best interests and against yours. Or at least they will definitely prioritize theirs over yours. If you've got a manager, it might look like he's helping you with your career, but push comes to shove, if he has to choose between his career and your career, he's choosing his, right? That's not a moral problem that you need to get upset about. It's a practical issue that you need to solve for. Okay? Even your partner who loves you or whatever, or your kids, You got to ask, well, what are they trying to get out of this? What is their version of winning this? What is their version of a reward? And does that explain their behavior? Doesn't mean they're actually malicious towards you. They maybe not even, they don't want to hurt you. Maybe their reward would be making you feel happy. But you can look at it that way. Like, what would explain this behavior in terms of an intention that's in their best interest, right? If I'm working with a crocodile, he wants to eat me, he doesn't want to get hurt. As long as I understand that, if I see him creeping up towards me, I'm not like, oh, he wants a pat. It's like, no, he's looking for a chance to rip my fucking leg off, right? Because that's what a crocodile would do if that's where they would creep up on someone. Like, that explains them. When I was talking to my client at the time, this bird was bothering him during the session. And I pointed out, well, he's sitting at a place where the bird would logically assume that humans go and distribute food. The bird isn't there to hurt you, he's there to get free food. And once you understand that, you can understand maybe how to get rid of the bird, right? I think of it as the chessboard switch. You're playing chess against someone, turn the board around as if you're them and go, what am I trying to achieve here? What do the pieces tell me? What are these moves in service towards? What am I trying to do? I'm trying to get checkmate. What does checkmate mean in this situation? What is me winning? And right now, my wife and I are negotiating to buy a house because we never learn our lessons. Um, and we're up against another couple who wants to buy the house, and of course, there's the couple selling the house. And I keep doing that. I keep switching. Like, if I'm them selling it, what makes sense here? They just massively discounted the house. Um, and there's a few other pieces of data, and I look at like they're trying to sell as quickly as possible. That's what it looks like. That's what explains all of their behavior. They're desperate, right? So that gives me a sense like when they say something that might sound like it's in our best interest, what it really is how do I sell this house the quickest? They're trying to say what they think will do that, right? Um, but one of the main things you can do, if you can't do the board switch and figure out what are they trying to do, what's in their best interest, how are they trying to achieve that, what you can do is at least plan for the contingencies. Have a backup, have a safety net, have pivot ideas, option B, where they can't hurt you, even if they turn out to be the most malicious person, right? Let's say, for example, you're working with somebody on your website and you don't trust them with your logins and everything like that. Well, you could ask yourself, well, how do I make it that they can work on the website without needing to log in? Or how do I make it I have some sort of master override login that if they lock me out, I can come back in and lock them out? Like, make it so you don't need to trust their morality. Just trust their behavior. They will do what's in their best interest. What happens if that turns against me? What happens if they had to choose between me and their best interest and they choose their best interest? How do I make it that that can't hurt me? Just the other day I got kicked off Facebook. No reason at all, really. I won't go into it, but I'm pretty sure AI just chose to kick me off. Apparently that's happening to a lot of people. And I'm permanently banned for life. Luckily, I thought about this many years ago. My content is spread over every platform I could think of just in case of this. I had this contingency set up over 4 years ago. I started repurposing. That's the reason that I post on everywhere all the time. I'm not trying to annoy anyone. It's because this is the second time I've been kicked off a platform without any warning and without any ability to like get my stuff back or anything. I set it up that I don't need a platform to be nice to me, that I don't need to trust its morality. I don't need to trust that it will stick with the agreements. I don't need a signed contract with my clients because a signed contract is meaningless if their priorities change. I've had people who have had signed contracts with me for various things turn against me and disobey what's in the contract because somebody will choose their preferences over a contract. So what do? I make it that I don't need a contract, right? I set it up so that if they do betray or disappoint or go off script, I have a backup plan for that. And if you go into all major negotiations and so on like that, like with this house thing, I've got a plan for if we can't buy the house, like if we just lose the deal. It's a very simple one. We go look at other houses. Doesn't sound like much, but it gives me a sense of relief, like these people can't hurt me. And there's no outcome here that's bad for me. I've even got like if we can't buy any house, it's like, okay, we'll just rent for cheaper and spend our money on travel instead. Right? We'll enjoy being richer than, having a house and being broke like most people. So if you always have a backup and a contingency, then there's no fear of other people and you can just look at them objectively and just make objective decisions rather than like, oh, I hope this works out, which puts you in a terrible position for for collaborating and negotiating. And you want to sort of overlap your options as much as possible, like me having all my content on lots of social media. Have backups for the backups, have parallel things running. Have it like, if you're trying to sell a house, sell it to like 10 different people rather than hoping that one of them buys. Have lots of things going at once so that no one of them can hurt you. Even if you're in business, don't have all of your work with one client. If they ditch you, you're fucked. This is why I got out of being an employee. Even if you're an employee, have at least some other small drip of income coming from somewhere else that you could quickly dial up if you lost your job. Right? Don't have all your eggs in one basket like that, and then people can't hurt you. You don't need to trust them, right? Because that's the key to this is you can learn to master how to read people like I have. You can spend decades studying psychology in a practical applied sense, working in, rehabilitation or with drug addicts or anything like that. Or the quicker option, set it up so you don't need to know that stuff. Set it up so people can't hurt you. That you don't need to trust them. That you assume, not that you assume the worst from people, not that level of paranoid when you're dysfunctional and you can't interact in the world, but just a more like a just in case. Like, don't trust your judgment of people. You think someone's a good person, you might be wrong. You think someone's a bad person, you might be wrong. Are you set up so that you can be wrong? Rather than hoping you're right, rather than believing the stories you tell yourself about people. Because I'll tell you right now, if anyone has ever disappointed you, or ever betrayed you, or ever unpleasantly surprised you, that is evidence that you are not perfect at judging people, right? If you're perfect at judging people, there are no surprises. But we're constantly surprised by people, aren't we? People let us down and so on. People disappoint us. That just means we're not good at judging people. Okay? So if you've ever been that way, then you can't trust your judgment of people. And the beautiful thing is you don't need to trust your judgment. You can develop skills, sure, but even better than that, you can be a person who doesn't need the skills, right? Set up your life in such a way that no one can hurt you. And that is what I call functional paranoia. I'm going to assume that at some point, any given time, I can be unexpectedly fucked over. I'm going to assume that I can't judge people perfectly, that people can surprise me. Even my wife, even my best friends, there's been times where I'm like, oh shit, that came out of nowhere. How do I set it up so that if that happens, they can't hurt me? How do I make sure that when I'm relying on other people and creating power, or giving them power over my life in some way, collaborating with them on projects and so on. How do I make it that if they totally turn on me, it's not big damage? How do I make sure that, they're on a need to know basis, that I don't give them more access than is required? How do I make sure that there are more than one pair of eyes on this thing so that if someone turns on me, I have a witness? How do I set it up where I'm sort of got a healthy level of paranoia, where I'm functioning well. I'm Steve Irwin doing all this stuff. I don't trust primates at all, but I work with them all the time, right? How do I become the guy who makes guerrilla documentaries without getting torn to pieces? That question. And then you won't get so morally upset by people being people. Because that's all they're doing. They're just being fucking humans. I don't know what you're dreaming of if you think that humans should be good people, right? We are primates. We're the apex predator on this planet, right? We have achieved that apex by fucking over every other living organism on this planet. And you think people should be trusted to be good all the time? That is delusional. All right? There are good people out there for now. And then maybe one day they'll turn. Maybe they won't. There are bad people that will one day have a turnaround and they'll be good from here on out. We don't know who's going to be who. It's not possible to predict accurately. So make it so you don't need to. Okay. Now I'm going to post a very long post around this if you want to get into more accurate about reading people, understanding motives, having counter plays. You can work on that there. But hopefully this answers your question. Thank you so much. Cheers.